why don't I go ahead and get started? Does that seem like a reasonable plan?
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, I'll just go ahead with the introducing the team here. I'm a senior advisor for community engagement. Now, that senior advisor has to do with the color of my hair rather than my extensive experience in early childhood. But I've been doing this as a volunteer a couple of years ago since I retired. Because Yasmina Vinci is my wife, and she put me to work as a volunteer here. And I get to do the fun stuff. I tell great stories I'm hearing from one program to another. Over the last year, Sandy and Lucretia have joined the team here. And I just have to say, my job has gotten to be just a whole lot easier. And I think that the experience of everybody involved with Parent Gauge has gotten a lot easier because both of them are wonderful at listening to problems, figuring them out, usually making you feel good you had the problem because you had a chance to talk with them in the first place. So Sandy's a product manager. Lucretia, the title here is Parent Gauge consultant, but Lucretia, more than anybody else, is the one who probably spends the most time figuring out little things that you can do better. So that's the introduction to the team, and it's a cool 2/3 of this team is really cool. And if you want to go to the next slide, just if I could go back and do the best I can at outlining what it is that makes Parent Gauge different from all of the other assessments. Now, this phrasing here, it measures the parent experience and the impact of your program's engagements through a guided conversation. Now, and that's what it does. But what that really means, if you look into it, the important part of this is that as a result of the Parent Gauge conversations, you come up with knowing a couple of things about that child that you did not know before. And the mother can come up knowing a couple of things that we've learned through 50 years of helping 30 million families. We've learned a lot of stuff. And the Parent Gauge conversation helps us figure out which of that stuff is most valuable for that particular child at that particular time. So it measures the parent experience and the impact of your program's engagement efforts. That's kind of dry language, but the parent experience, new stuff the mother can help the child. Programs, engagement efforts, new stuff we can do to help the parent. So if that's the best I can do, it's sort of giving an overview of what it is. And then adding to that, in the next slide, I want to talk a little bit about how it came to be. And this, I think, maybe can help you feel a little bit more about what it is that's different from other assessments. And it really is different from every other assessment. Now, this goes back about 6 years when the Office of Head Start surveyed 500 Head Start families to find out what it is that they look to Head Start for more than anything else. And there are, of course, the normal things, do you have a roof over your head, help you with jobs, help with lots of things. But the single most important thing that families want from Head Start, they want to be better parents. There was no tool to help parents with that. And as always is the case in Head Start, the good stuff comes from the people out there who are actually doing the job day to day. And a group of Head Start's directors from the Chicago area found that there was a group at the University of Chicago that was just good at this stuff. So NHSA went out and raised $1 million to develop this. And a lot of people spent $1 million on stuff that turned out to be lousy. But in this case, I think they spent it well. It really came out to be very good. It really can help people become better parents. And again, the thing that it does is that it focuses on the dozens of interactions every day between a child and the adults in their life. Both the child and their parents, the child and the Head Start staff, and the parents and the Head Start staff. And it consists of 2 conversations conversations, generally 2 conversations a year. And at the end of these conversations, you get specific measurements showing you a couple of things to concentrate on from the first interview. And from the second interview, a couple of months later, you find out whether the things you concentrated on actually got better. So in a sense, you're all familiar with the buzzword CQI now, continuous quality improvement, that OHS is talking about a lot as a buzzword, but it's really important, continuous quality improvement. And it's sort of a CQI program specifically for individual children and their families. So if we want to advance to the next thing, we'd like to take a poll right now. And if you could enter into your, I think you got a way to enter this in, what you're currently doing to measure parent engagement, whether it's a different assessment survey, something you've designed yourself, or you're currently looking for the right tool, any of those things. And we'll take just a second. We see, hey, we got 36. We got a lot of responses coming in quickly here. We're up to 44, 50. We'll hold it until they slow down. Don't want to take too much time, but we want everybody a chance to do this. Okay. We're in the mid 60s now. Looks pretty good. I saw about 60 people signed in when we started. I guess we got a few more. Now I'm seeing 73 responses right now, and 74. We got another 75. I'll keep this open for another few seconds. 76. So. Okay, so what we've got is, I don't know if other people can see this or not. I can see it, so I'll tell you. But about 19% are using a different assessment survey. About 50% saying they're working on their own designed assessment. And about 31% say we're currently looking for the right tool. Now, one of the things that I would offer as a thought here is, a lot of people have designed some pretty good assessments with the right questions, but for the most part, you don't get the quantification that you get with parent gauge. And for sure, you're not going to be able to get the comparison with all of the other hundreds of groups, hundreds of programs that have used parent gauge. So one of the good things about parent gauge is you can look and see how your answers to any particular question compare to the Head Start community as a whole. So you may find, hey, our kids are being read too well. We don't need to worry about that. But you may find that they're not being read too well. So let's concentrate on that. So those are the observations there. And then the next slide is just a little bit about what parent gauge is and how it's different. And again, it's a way to measure the parent's experience. It's not a strength and needs assessment. And particularly, it's not a self-guided survey. And I do think that a lot of these ones developed internally are kind of self-guided. This is guided specifically towards the questions that the researchers found and picked from dozens of other questions, the questions that are most important and proven by research to be things that help a child develop. So that's how parent gauge is different. And I'm gonna then I think turn it over to Lucretia. She's going to talk about the next slide, I think, which is who uses it. And I'm right. Here's the bright slide. Cool. Take it away.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. So who uses parent gauge? Well, parent gauge, it all starts with the frontline staff. And this can be family service workers, teachers, or anyone that the program has that connects with the families that do the surveys. They're the ones who complete these interviews with the family and gather the data. Then program directors and data directors then use that data to assess the growth and needs of the program. And finally, parents too. Parents also get something out of using Parent Gauge. They get to give their feedback during the interview. And some programs will actually share individual growth reports with that family to show them how they've progressed. Okay. So on the next slide, we are hitting just another poll. We'd like to know, how do you and your team feel about family engagement, regardless of the assessment that you currently use? And we're going to give you guys a little bit of time here, just a few moments for you to go ahead and make your choice. It looks like all of the above is really winning this poll, and that's healthy. That's about what we were expecting to see. Now, the great thing about Parent Gauge is that regardless of which one you responded to, Parent Gauge works with each of these answers. These interviews, because we do them as conversations, it makes it easier to connect with those families. It's helping with structured questions that are designed to keep the conversation flowing. And because it's easing this part of it, it's allowing you to focus on how rewarding your connection is with the families. And all of this starts at the beginning with the interviews. So here in the interviews is where connection with the families is made. And changes within a program can be based upon the reports of the data, and it's the interviews that get you that data. So what is an interview comprised of? First, it's comprised of closed-ended questions. Interviews average around 25 closed-ended questions, with 4 of those questions geared specifically towards the individual child. And those 4 questions are based upon information that is kept in the child's details. Each question on the mid and term post interviews have 2 parts. The first part asks how families feel they are doing, and the second part asks if the families feel the program is helping. These closed-ended questions are what drives the data. Now, the next part are the open-ended questions. And these drive the heart of the interview. And it allows the opportunities for greater feedback on the closed-ended questions. And you'll see where I've got that circle in purple. Each of these sections are broken down to align with the PFCE requirements. And I've got Sandy here to explain how it all comes together.
Thank you, Lucretia. So after individual interviews are done, we can then take those close-ended questions where parents were asked to use a 5-point scale and aggregate all of that to see results. So if you're a teacher or a caseworker, you could view the result of your classrooms or of your caseload. Leadership can view the entire center or program so that we can see the aggregated results of the questions from the interview. In this example, we can see that our caretakers are pretty good at making sure our students are in class every day, but we're getting a lower score in reading to our children. And this could be for a couple of reasons, right? We might already have some sense on why that is, especially if we're looking at early Head Start and they're really young kids. So by using this data, we can see, where we want to make some efforts throughout the year. If we know that they're doing really well when it comes to attendance, we might not spend as much time there, and any extra time we have, we're going to focus on setting aside time to read with our children or promote to that. Okay, now within Parent Gauge, you do have a couple of reports that are already accessible. You'll have full access to the data you collect on spreadsheets, but we also have some built-in reports inside of Parent Gauge. The previous slide showed a glimpse of our baseline report, and that particular report is reviewing one season of results. So at the very beginning of the year, if we've conducted interviews with all of our families, we can take a pulse of where we're at in the beginning of the year to look at how our parents are scoring things like reading to their children. And we can even look at if we're doing if it's a couple months in and we're asking them to give feedback on the program already, we can take a pulse there as well. And this is going to help us gauge, where our families are at, how the program's doing. And again, it's looking at one season of time. We have another report called a growth report, and this is once you've conducted multiple seasons of interviews. And what I mean by that is you might have an interview towards the beginning of the year, one in the middle of the year, and one at the end. The growth report is going to help you compare different seasons so that you can see how on that same question where we asked, are you reading with your child? We can see how they responded in the beginning of the year compared to how they responded at the end of the year, so that we can see if those efforts that we made throughout the year did help promote that reading to children from the beginning there. So both of those are going to be available within Parent Gauge directly. And like I mentioned, you'll have that data set along with the reports that'll show your open-ended questions so that you could put that all together to help with planning and to determine how successful your measures were throughout the year. Now I have another poll for you. And so this is a question for you personally in the role that you're in. What are you most interested in reporting? What has your interest piqued the most when it comes to Parent Gauge and what we're looking at? Is it CQI? Do we want more assistance meeting those CQI requirements and measuring CQI? Overall parent PFCE engagement efforts? Or classroom and program improvements. So we'll give that a second to run so that you can gauge in there. It looks like we're getting a lot of all of the above, which is pretty much what I expect. We're all interested in all of these things, but by all means, if there's one in particular that you're like, I do need more help with my CQI efforts or my overall PFCE efforts, I'd love to see how you're feeling there. We'll give that there a moment. Love to see the high percentage of people who are responding. I think on our end, we also are interested in what are you most interested in, right? Like we want to make sure that our product is addressing the needs of the field. So by all means, thank you guys. Okay, so it looks like we've got the majority of our responses in here. And of course, like I said, we know you're interested in all of the above, right? These are all things, but overall PFCE engagement efforts, this is going to be a tool that's going to help you with that. And we can move on to this next slide to see how we align with the PFCE framework from OHS. So we have that here on the screen. As mentioned previously, the questions were designed with the PFCE framework in mind. When Lucretia went over those questions, she highlighted those different categories, and those are coming specifically from the PFCE framework. You'll notice that the sections there were bullet points that are listed here. For example, one of the first close-ended questions we asked explores family engagement in transition. And then it leads over into the questions that we shared on reading. And that's going to fall under families as lifelong learners and educators and learners. So each of the questions in Parent Gauge were designed to engage the PFCE framework to ensure that you're meeting your goals. And adopting Parent Gauge is going to intuitively adopt the PFCE framework since it is designed with that in mind. In addition, Parent Gauge is also a powerful tool for continuous quality improvement. CQI requires that we are gathering data, developing change strategies, and then identifying whether those changes that we made are successfully improving those areas. And Parent Gauge is going to give you a tool to identify the areas of improvement, right? Like we saw earlier, we can see this is where our parents are struggling, or this is what we can use more support in. And then we can measure again at the end of the year to see, did the changes that we make progress in these areas? So your first interview season will help you identify areas to focus on, and your next interview season will help you see if your parents saw an improvement. And so that's going to be where we promote CQI and are able to measure it there. We've received feedback from multiple programs that OHS has reacted favorably to this approach, right? Because it's falling right in line with what they're expecting when it comes to measuring CQI. Okay, so with all of that in mind, you can probably see how the data collected in Parent Gauge can be used. Parent Gauge reports can be used as granularly as individual families. So when we're looking at those overall results, as a teacher, you could go in and pick out a student and look at their results directly. So at the end of the year, you could share with your family, you know, where we were at in the beginning of the year and all of the growth that we've seen throughout the year. So you can celebrate individual families' progress in that way. It gives you a way to do that. It can also be used at a more macro level by leadership to guide PFCE efforts and identify focus areas throughout the school year for each center. So if we're seeing some trends in one center that needs help in one area, right? I know a lot of the time if we have, depending on the location of our center, sometimes we're going to have individual needs. And so this gives you a way to identify a PFCE needs that are different center to center. So you'd be able to look at the data results from that and customize, you know, the resources that we're going to use throughout the year for that particular center. And then Parent Gauge can also be used to share results with external audiences. A lot of programs are reporting on their CQI and PFCE efforts here, you know, to their regulators and those that where we need to report to. But we've also seen it used for grant applications and other external players. So by all means, this is the reports here are something that you'll be able to use as you're reporting on your PFCE efforts, both internally and externally. So to summarize, Parent Gauge is a web-based tool that promotes PFCE engagement through a structured interview, collects relevant data, and promotes the connection between your programs and the families that you serve. So Bob is going to go over the next steps if you're interested in a closer look.
Okay, first, just to emphasize that this includes everything for all your staff members, covers every program. The cost covers all the training, technical assistance, and online help and everything. So basically, you know, everything's included. Now, we go to next step. Now, if you're already ready to say yes, of course, that's easy. We can send you a quote. I would say about the pricing, we've priced Parent Gauge low enough so that prices should not be a stopper, but it's based on the size of your program grant. And I would just say a thing about that, you know, I know from being married to Yasmina, the executive director of NHSA, how much she hates to spend $1 on anything that's not going up to Congress and getting more money for all of you. But she thought that Parent Gauge was important enough that initially it was priced at a level that we were subsidizing it. She considers it that important. Now, we've reached a point where we're not taking any money away from our advocacy efforts anymore, but I just wanted to mention that about this. Now, if you are ready to go ahead, obviously there's stuff you don't fully know right now, but it really wouldn't be rash to say, hey, let's go ahead right now. I mean, Lucretia and Sandy will walk you through in detail everything you need to get started. And I would say about any piece of sophisticated software, you know, you want help in figuring out ways to unleash the power of that software that's relevant to your program and to quickly overcome any little snags that might happen. I'm not an expert in software, but the one thing I do know is that there are always more things that the software manufacturers didn't plan on. And we've gotten most of those things worked out over the last several years. So it's generally pretty smooth, but you still want Sandy or Lucretia to walk you through this thing. And you may, if anybody feels they're ready to go ahead right now, let us know. If you want more information, and I suspect many of you will, we would like to make a presentation to you, detailed on the specifics of your program and how it can work out for your team. So if you could, Sandy does these things too, but Lucretia and I probably do more of them because Sandy's got moving the big picture forward. So if you could email either Lucretia or me, we'll be happy to arrange an appointment for you alone, for you and any members of your staff that you may want. It's important before you go ahead that everybody feel bought in. We may make a presentation specifically for your people who are going to do the interviewers. So we've got a lot of stuff we can do to help you move toward a decision. Just let us know and we can talk about it. So I guess from here on we go to the questions, and Sandy, I'm gonna turn it over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Bob. Yeah, so if you have any questions for us, go ahead and drop them in the chat. Let's see if we've had any already.
It's been pretty quiet so far. Someone did ask about where to find the data that we receive, but when you were talking about the reports, I think that may have answered their question for them. But if they have any more, please give a holler. We would be glad to assist you.
Yeah, and to expand on that, we do all of your data that you're collecting through ParentGauge from your families. Like I said, you can download a full Excel report that will have everything in it. But there are some reports in ParentGauge already where you can use filters to identify this is the exact thing that I'm looking for, and it'll filter down to that data specifically. So you will have access to all of the data that you're collecting within ParentGauge.
We do have a new question. Has this been piloted in a center or program yet? And is this easy for staff to implement and use?
Yeah, that's a great question. It has been, this is a live product. We've been on the scene for, about 5 years at this point. And we've had up to about 200 different programs that have used this. So it is something that it has been used in the field already. We have some references. Even if you wanted to talk to a program that is actively using it, we could put you in contact with. And what you're mentioning, it's not unusual, right? Staffing patterns and staff retention. I think that is something that's on the top of a lot of programs' minds right now. And we totally understand that. So part of the implementation process, if you do adopt ParentGauge, Lucretia and I are going to make sure that you get everything set up. It's a pretty quick setup process. If you're using Child Plus, you can even download your rosters directly into ParentGauge, and it's super quick. It's really just a matter of downloading it from Child Plus and uploading it to ParentGauge. If you don't, it's still pretty simple. It's pretty straightforward of just updating your classrooms. And then as soon as that data is in there, as soon as we know what children and families and teachers are there, we're gonna, you'll be able to start conducting interviews. So the setup process is pretty straightforward, pretty easy to get started on there. And then your teachers or caseworkers will be able to start engaging and doing the interviews.
If I could just supplement what Sandy said, you mentioned the pilot programs, and the pilot programs that we did with ParentGauge predate Sandy and Lucretia being involved. But we go back about 4 years ago, and they did do this as a pilot with about 50 different programs engaged in the pilot. And then we got it set for general usage, which we're now into what I guess our 5th year coming up now. And with the passage of every year, we found out more stuff to make it easier and better. So we started with a pilot, but we've improved a whole lot beyond what we got from the original pilot.
We also do interview training sessions, and it's not just when you first come on board with ParentGauge, it's whenever you need it. So if at any point you have more new people that you would like for us to just do a presentation on how to get through an interview, best practices for that interview, we always offer that, and a lot of our programs take us up on it, and they appreciate the help. And sometimes we'll work with them once or twice a year, even though the program's been with us for a few years. So we really, really want to make sure that everyone feels comfortable and knows what they're doing while they're working in it. And it is simple to use, but as everyone knows, when you're starting from scratch and learning something new, having somebody guide you can always be a good thing. And we are here to do that.
Yeah, and to add another, because just based on the poll that we saw earlier, right, where a lot of us are using a self-assess or an assessment that you've created on site there. So a part of that could also be, you know, looking at how Parent Gauge could replace some of those, right? There's still going to be assessments, of course, that you'll be doing outside of Parent Gauge, like your family needs assessment will still need to be done and those kinds of things, but there might be others that you'll be able to see there. A great question also from Diana. When does it talk nicely with Shine, TS Gold, etc.? Right now, we don't have the capability to directly upload that data, but we are working on on an update where you'll be able to upload any Excel file. So that's soon to come. And you can still use it if you're using Shine or TS Gold. By all means, it's just a little bit more of a manual process, adding in your child records.
And we have another question. Does it interfere with Child Plus if we are already using it?
Oh yeah, great question. It's not in place of Child Plus. You'll still be using Child Plus, and then we do talk nicely to Child Plus. That's already set up to take in those downloads.
And the next question is it a web-based system, and can it be used offline in areas where service is limited?
Great question. It is web-based. So if you're going to do the interview live in the module, then you do have to have some internet access. I guess you could, though, download the questions ahead of time. There is an option where you would basically set up your interview, and then you can download the questions so that you have a PDF of them. That way you could fill it out on paper and then record it after. So if you have a family service worker that's going out doing home visits and they don't have guaranteed internet access, they could take that a stack of the Parent Gauge interviews, have it all set up, and then record those findings. There's also an option to record the conversation itself. So that's another way that they could record the conversation and then come back and complete, you know, those questions directly in the web-based app.
Okay, and the next question, do some of the questions overlap with the family assessment in Child Plus?
You know, that's a great question. I don't believe so. Lucretia, correct me if I'm wrong, but that family assessment is based more on the family needs assessment. So you're not going to get over there.
Yeah, Child Plus was actually, when Parent Gauge was made, it was made to complement Child Plus because it was actually taking care of the needs, not the needs assessment, but the family engagement portion that Child Plus does not. So it should not interfere with anything that you're doing through Child Plus.
Great questions. Feel free to chat some in here. We know we have a couple of, we have like 20 minutes left or so. Is there a language toggle to use Spanish? Great question. One of the questions that you'll ask your families is, what are they speaking at home, right? Because we want to know if we have families where English isn't the primary language. So you'll be able to identify families who by what language they're speaking. And then there is a language toggle within the interview itself so that you could make all of the questions a different language. So for example, if you have a center where we have a lot of Spanish speakers and we have our Spanish speaking family service workers, they can go in with interviews that are all in Spanish and we'll guide them through that conversation too. And to add to that too, I think one thing that I've found really helpful with some programs is you can also compare how are our non-English or primary English speakers, how are their results comparing to our native English speakers. That way you can see if there are resources that we have to tailor specifically to them. So when you're looking at the reports in Parent Gauge, you can also use that question where, you know, are they a native English speaker? You can use that to identify those families that are and those that aren't when you're looking at results, so that you can get deeper into the data there. Okay, and another question, if we have several Arabic speaking families, or Arabic. I can't talk today. So I believe you can identify that they speak Arabic, but the interview questions themselves, there are a couple of options for different languages you can put the interviews in. And Lucretia, let me know if you have the details of that, but I don't believe Arabic is going to be one of the languages there.
Unfortunately, it's not. We do have French. So if some of the Arabic speaking families know French, I know French can sometimes be a middle dialogue. It can do it in French if needed. It does Spanish. Let's see. I believe there are 4 or 5 different languages, but unfortunately, Arabic or Farsi is not one of them.
Yeah, that's a great question. And that might be something that we might be able to do later on. You know, we are always looking at improving the product and making sure we're addressing those things, but there are some translations, but not as extensively yet. All right, team. Well, thank you so much for your time. We're going to hang on for a couple minutes on our end, but if you have any other questions, otherwise, you know, we do have the Parent Gauge email there. If you have, if you do want to start looking into pricing right away, if you want to get a live demo specific for your program, for your institution, let us know. Reach out to Bob and Lucretia. We'll get something on the calendar so that we can tailor a presentation directly to you, show you the full questions that we have available, walk through the demo of the module itself. So by all means, reach out if you'd like to get more information there, or if you want to look at pricing already, go ahead and let us know, and we'll make sure we get you in touch with the right people.
Thank you all so much for your time. It's greatly appreciated. And we do hope that we can help you all in the future with Parent Gauge.
Go team.
Yay.
All right, thank you. Yeah, I'm seeing lots of thank yous and thumbs up.
Yes.
Thank you.
And I have to give a shout out to Hazard, Kentucky. I lived in Richmond for 13 years, so woohoo. Claudia, feel free to email either Bob or myself, or send an email to Parent Gauge. We will be glad to talk more with you.
All right, and with that, I think we gave it a couple minutes, so I think we're good to go here. Thanks y'all for jumping on today.
Yes, thank you all so much. Take care.